guess we could start. And if anyone else join us, then yeah, they'll just join us. Um, I think it should be in the morning, Thailand, but then it's afternoon over here in Australia in Sydney. So let me start by basically saying welcome. So welcome to today's webinar, which is around responsible innovation in AI. So my name is Yat Ming Ooi. So I'm a lecturer in innovation management at the University of Auckland Business School in New Zealand. So my research area is basically around innovation management as well as technology strategy and commercialization. So obviously I teach at the University of Auckland, so I actually teach responsible innovation, apart from other courses such as strategic management and innovation ecosystem. So I guess we can start by basically me just giving an overview of today's webinar. So today's webinar, or why my webinar, is basically about how we can apply a responsible innovation lens when it comes to looking at how we develop AI or how we implement AI. So this ties back to my teaching as well as my research around the innovation management area. Um, so for today's webinar, so I split today's webinar into three sort of sections, you might call it. First is basically just to give you a crash course about what is responsible innovation, some of the basics of it. Second is basically then to look at how do we apply the responsible innovation lens to AI. Is that like, so what are some of the applicable part of responsible innovation when we look at AI or responsible AI? You'll be interested because there are actually a lot of similarities between the responsible AI frameworks being applied by different organizations, as well as the responsible innovation framework or that lens itself. Third part of today's webinar, we'll be looking at some of the challenges of developing responsible AI. So let me just go straight to. So first part would be looking at what do I, when I say responsible innovation, what do I actually mean by that? So we obviously have to start from. Oops, we obviously have to start from the. Yeah, we obviously have to start from the top, which is what, when I say innovation, what do I actually mean by it? So when we look at science and technology studies, one could actually categorize the different types of research that we do, the different types of scientific research that we do, based on four quadrants. So what we have, well, what I can see in the quadrant there is one section about creating pure basic science research. So it's all just about creating new knowledge based on existing knowledge. And we call that science because they don't actually have a part whereby they apply it. So it's all just purely creating new knowledge, new scientific knowledge. At the other end, we have what we call the applied research. So the applied side of research. So that's where we see technologies being developed, new processes being developed, new technologies being developed. And basically, they all have this practical relevance, or they all have these practical applications as part of the outcome of that specific research. So most of the time, you would see that in the form of new technologies being developed, new processes being developed. So that's at the other end of the quadrant over there. So in this diagram that you see over here, where does innovation fit in, basically? So you can think of innovation as turning science, so turning pure basic research into applicable technologies, into applicable processes, into applicable products, applicable services. So you can think of innovation as that link between that science and that technology part of research when it comes to, obviously this is from a science, technology, and innovation studies type of perspective when we look at different parts of it and how they interact with one another. This is a bit small, I understand from the screen, but then the main source is actually from the bottom, from this publication from the EU. So basically, when we look at innovation, when we talk about innovation, we always look at it from, well, the popular media will look at innovation as outputs. What are some of the innovations that you created? What are some of the innovation outputs that you created? So these are some examples from the United Nations and the EU Interagency Task Team. So they basically looked at what are different outputs that you can get from innovation. For example, product innovation, new products, new services, or new business models, for example. Even marketing innovation is considered innovation. So anything new, basically, whether it's process, products, services, um, even new paradigms, new ideas. But the main thing is you need to actually apply it. So new ideas itself, it's not innovation because that's not being applied in a practical sense. So innovation always need to have that practical application outcome, that commercialization, that is sort of a condition of why, or when we say innovation, that's basically what you need. So obviously the interagency task force, they were basically looking at some of the different types or different outputs of innovation that are actually applicable when it comes to trying to address the sustainable development goals. So these are just some examples. So I'll not go through all of them because you obviously can read it from the report, and if you Google it, all these different types of innovation outputs will come out anyway. So there's no point for me going through one by one because that's not the purpose of today's webinar, obviously. But just to show you what are some of the different outputs. Now, when we talk about innovation, those are some of the outputs that you could see on the screen now. So I'll give an example. When it comes to innovation outputs or outcomes, there are incremental and radical type of outputs. So I'll give you an example, maybe when we look at mobile phones. So mobile phones started there, right? I still remember my grandfather having that mobile phone or some form of it, which is a huge one. We call it a water bottle, we call it a brick. Basically, if you throw it at someone will probably need to go to the hospital, because of that. So it started off that way. And then over the years, we see incremental changes to it. We see different versions of mobile phone being created. And we obviously also see, different more radical type of I would say innovation as well in the mobile phone space. I remember my mom having that one, the second one that I circle over there. That one actually is a stark contrast from the first one. I still remember because I had both of them in front of me when I was young and I was comparing both of them. They look really different. So you could say that it's a radical innovation in that sense from the first version to, let's say, this specific version. The innovation involved is actually quite radical in a way, because the form factor is different. The technology within the phone itself is different. Why? Because the technology will need to fit the new version of or new style of the phone. So that's one example. And I still remember going to my first year of university, and that is my first mobile phone. We call it the butterfly somehow. Well, in Malaysia, we call it the butterfly. So that's again, you can see that how the mobile phone actually changes over the years. So this, and obviously we have all the smaller incremental, for example, slightly bigger, maybe different color screens. Those are considered more, incremental type of changes. But in terms of form factor itself, you could see how it changes over the years, and some of it could be considered as radical as well. Another example you could look at when it comes to innovation is M-Pesa. So M-Pesa is actually a mobile phone-based payment system. It uses text. It's not like what we have today, and then we open up whatever app and then we can transfer money. It doesn't work that way at all. It's just based solely on text. So this specific one is an innovation in terms of the process. So started off in Kenya. So they have people, a lot of them, they have no access to banking, or basically they do not have the capacity to access to banking. So M-Pesa is basically a mobile phone system, a text-based system whereby they could actually make payments, receive payments through text by having kiosks like this set up in the rural areas. So this itself is an innovation because, yep, the mobile phone technology obviously is not per se, but then the way it's being applied in a different context, that itself is also considered innovation. And in this case, the M-Pesa case is an application of a proven technology, obviously in countries like ours, but then for in Africa that's considered something new, and then it's being applied innovatively in a different way. So obviously, obviously I've been talking about how innovation is good, right? So they have different outputs, they can solve SDGs, and then they have incremental and radical aspects to it. So they're all good, right? But then at the end of the day, there are still the dark side of new technologies, or the dark side of innovation. For example, if you think about the ethics side of it, there are different innovations that are being developed. So for example, one example was in the States, they have this product called 3D Liberator. So it's basically a plastic, it's a plastic gun that you can print using 3D printers. So is that a good innovation? Is that ethically right, wrong? Obviously, today's webinar is not to discuss about that, but that's just one example to get you around like, the ethics of innovation. How does that work? So that is one example. So is the company who produced that actually doing something right? Or maybe to some people it might be that, it's just an innovation, but some people be like, is that actually right? You're sort of encouraging people to print this at home if they have a 3D printer, etc. So there's this like gray area kind of thing. Second, obviously, is also responsibility. So who is accountable for, let's say, the same example, 3D Liberator? So who is accountable for what happened when, let's say, a customer print that out, did something bad with it? So who is responsible? Obviously, it's the customer, because the customer might be using that and shoot someone or whatever, right? But at the same time, is the company responsible too? Because it's back to that question of ethics. And then the responsibility part, is the company responsible? Is the company not responsible? But it's just to get you thinking a bit about all these different aspects when we talk about innovation, because we normally see in the news innovation is good, right? Like it's great and stuff. But so next, I know this definition here is very long, so I'll give you like maybe just 5 seconds to read it. Basically, it's a definition directly from the report that you see at the bottom from von Schumberg around what is responsible innovation. So a bit of context. So this is actually a framework that she proposed in the European Union. So it's actually being used now in EU and in the UK when they look at technology research, or whether they should fund certain technology research or not. So this definition is actually being used. So yeah, just spend like maybe a few seconds, have a read at that. I know it's a mouthful. I'm not going to read them out. And then after that, I'll go through the definition instead. So when you look at this definition over here, obviously there's a lot of things going on, right? But you can sort of distill that down into a few different components, basically. So what is responsible innovation? So responsible innovation is a process. Just like most innovation, or you ask any of us innovation management or innovation strategy researchers, innovation, we always conceptualize that as a process. Obviously, you have the outputs associated with the process, but we normally look at it from a process view. We look at it as a process. Similarly, responsible innovation, over here, it's also a process. So it's a process that leads to outputs. In this case, Rene von Schumberg was saying that it leads to marketable products. Why? Because then it allows, the fusion. If you remember my earlier slide around the fusion of science and technology, and then you have innovation, and that's why you have a product. But obviously, responsible innovation can also be used to look at not just marketable products, but also different services or even business processes. But in this example, it's marketable products. That's one example of the output when it comes to the responsible innovation process.
โอเคกดเล่นดูนะครับมันก็จะเล่นนะครับให้ลูกค้าดูนะครับนี่ก็ได้
Yep. Yep. So next, you see the green oval shapes there. So the responsible innovation process, they are basically talking about innovators, obviously, let's say companies or individual innovators. They're also talking about actors, so societal actors like you and me. So it's more like it's inclusive in a way. It's a process that leads to products as an output. And then within that process, we have different actors, or we have different stakeholders, the innovators, you, me, consumers, users, all the different actors. And the responsible innovation process, it needs to be transparent. So it needs to be interactive. It's not a one-way thing. It's not just me telling you what I want or you telling me what you want. Then that becomes your typical technology push and demand push type of innovation, right? So it's actually more interactive. So transparent, interactive, and mutually responsive. So it's about me responding to what you need and you responding to my concerns or what I need. So you see that interactivity and that collaborative, that co-creation part of it. And obviously it's about having a conversation, but at the same time, you need to, be responsive about it. And obviously, it's basically on the acceptability, sustainability, and the desirability of, the actual innovation process or the output. So with this specific definition here, obviously it's a mouthful, right? So you can distill this definition into, let's say, like more simply into the three, I would say the three components of responsible innovation. So obviously you have the responsibility part, but you also obviously have the ethics part, and another important one is actually the value part. So responsibility, basically, you can take the dictionary definition of it, and it's basically the duty to address a specific problem, specific challenge, specific issue, and then be held accountable, for the action or that specific decision that you make. Ethics as well, it's very clear cut because it's basically about moral principles that governs, a specific person's behavior, your behavior, my behavior, or govern how we actually conduct certain activities. Value, this definition that I have there is actually a very generic or very general definition of value. Basically, you can look at value as, it's just an advantage or a benefit that you get from something, or the benefit of using a specific product, benefit of using this phone, benefit of using a fancy pen, for example, that what value you derive from it. But if you look more closely, because so from responsibility, ethics, they are quite clear-cut concepts, and obviously they're all components of responsible innovation, right? Value is the one whereby it's a bit more, I would say, gray, because there are different definitions of value, and value means different things to different people. So let's just quickly go through, when we say value, the general definition that I just explained, is basically the benefit or advantage that you get, from something. Could be product, could be a person, could be anything. But from an economic perspective, value basically is the economic worth or the monetary worth of you getting something. Think about return on investment. You might buy something and then you try and calculate what is the return of investment when it comes to that specific purchase that you make. So that's the economic side when it comes to what is value. And obviously you have the sociology side, which is around value in sociology, is basically around, deeply held beliefs and principles. So each and every one of us, we have different beliefs based on, how we grow up, the environment that we grew up in, etc. The people that influence those behaviors, those principles or those beliefs, for example. So we all have different values basically when it comes to the sociology perspective of what is value. But all these three actually combine to affect, the different decisions we make and the different goals that we want to achieve, and also the how we behave in, different situations. So value itself are quite multidimensional or multifaceted, and obviously the different explanation or different definitions of value actually do affect how we actually make a decision or goals, make decisions, or try and achieve different goals, and as well as our behavior. Some examples of stakeholder value. So this specific piece of research was around we were looking at how companies scale up from startup, and how they scale up into larger organizations. So obviously these are just the stakeholders here are a bit different, but it's just one context that you can try and apply and see, oh, yep, you have different stakeholders, and obviously they have different types of values when when it comes to why they want to invest in a company, or why they start the company, or why they want to collaborate with those specific companies. So it's just one example to show that different stakeholders have different types of value, and making a certain decision or doing something would mean different things for different stakeholders. So it's just a context to look at, how value is different for different people, and value means different things, even for the same people, based on different application and different contexts. So just now we looked at how, when it comes to responsible innovation, it's a process, right? And then it's about creating, products, but of course, it's also about creating services and processes. And then obviously it involves the innovators, or the person who actually create, or the person or the organization who created the innovation, as well as societal actors, so the normal people like us, or even the customers, or the different stakeholders. We also obviously look at, responsible innovation. There are actually three components to it. So you have the responsibility part, you have the ethics part. They're actually different. Sometimes when you talk to people, they might tell you that they are similar, or they use them interchangeably, but they are actually slightly different concepts. And of course, we have the value part of it, which is the benefit that you derive from it. So those three components are components when it comes to responsible innovation. So next, we will actually have a look around, let's say, applying that innovation lens to AI, specifically to AI, because obviously the program is about AI, right? So I'm not going to go through all three definitions of responsible AI, but I found three definitions of responsible AI from Accenture, from IBM, and from Microsoft. So they basically talk about similar things, which is they're talking responsible AI is a practice, a set of principles. It's a process. It's a process of designing, developing, and deploying AI, obviously with good intentions. And they also mention around how we need to look at the different impacts of that responsible AI, whether it's to customers, to employees, to society, to different stakeholders. Um, they also talk about needing to have beneficial and equitable outcomes. You need to be reliable, need to be transparent, etc. Now let that sink into you for a while. Have a think around what I have been talking about when it comes to responsible innovation, and then looking at these three out of many responsible AI definitions. Could you see that, similarities there? A lot for me, when I was reading it, I can see a lot of similarities between responsible AI and responsible innovation itself, which is why I think responsible innovation as a lens, and then the tools, attached to that could actually be used to look at responsible AI, or to look at developing and designing, and deploying responsible AI. So obviously, me being a researcher, it's like these definitions look too similar. Then I'm like, why are they so similar? Can't be IBM talking to Microsoft. Well, IBM could be talking to Microsoft, and Accenture talking to IBM and Microsoft, but there's, there might be another reason why they are quite similar. And then what I found was the ISO guidelines on what is responsible AI. So again, you can see there the ISO's definition of responsible AI. And again, they're actually very similar, or I would say, yeah, quite similar when it comes to the essential IBM or Microsoft definition. I would actually sort of claim that Microsoft, Accenture, and IBM could have actually developed their version of it in different manifestation from the ISO guidelines definition, because you can see the ISO guidelines definition is a bit broader, it's a bit more general. But the ISO guidelines actually has guiding principles. They call them guiding principles of ethics. But essentially, when I was reading those guiding principles, they are basically sort of like best practice that you need to do when it comes to designing, developing, and deploying AI. And you can see the concept around fairness, around transparency, responsibility, privacy, inclusiveness. They all sort of, when I read that, it's like, oh, this sounded like responsible innovation. Which is why in this webinar, I'm basically presenting a set of tools that I think you could actually apply when it comes to looking at responsible AI. So when it comes to implementing responsible AI, so the responsible AI, implementing responsible innovation, the responsible innovation perspective is basically telling us that there are four main parts that you need to look at, or four main dimensions when it comes to applying responsible innovation in technology development or in innovation development. So the first one is basically being anticipatory. So you basically need to describe and analyze or have a think around that as well, the intended and unintended impacts that might arise from the innovation. Take that 3D liberator, that plastic 3D printed gun example that I gave just now. So if you're that company, you would basically need to have a think around, yep, this is good stuff, I can print all the different components out in I can print all the different components out using this 3D printer or make it very accessible, etc., etc. But then think about the unintended consequence of, or the consequences of that might actually arise from it. So obviously we're talking about, it could be the impact could be, economic, social, environmental, culture, any type of impacts. So it's not just about environmental, it's not just about social, it's not just about economics. It's basically, different types of impact that might actually occur. So had the company, when you're, or more like when you're implementing that, you have to think about, try and anticipate, because obviously some of these impacts are not obvious. So you need to talk to different people, you need to anticipate, which is again then reflected to the second dimension of it, or the second part of it, which is the reflective part. So it's about the innovator trying to reflect upon, what exactly is the purpose of me creating this specific technology, or what's the purpose of me, creating this AI tool over here, like what's the purpose of it? What is my motivation? And obviously, again, you can see that it's all about reflecting, thinking ahead, trying to anticipate again, well, what are some of the impacts, that might be known or not known. You realize these four parts, or these four dimensions, they're actually sort of, even though I present it like this, most of the time you see them present it like, like this as well, but it's more like an iterative process rather than you do first one first, then you reflect, then you deliberate about it, then you respond. That's not how it works. It's sort of like an iterative process, and they're actually quite interrelated as well. Third one is basically to think about, all right, the deliberative, basically you need to deliberately open up, the, so link back to the first and the second part of it, you need to deliberately open up, to external stakeholders about what are some of the purpose. You need to be open up to, let's say, people asking you questions about why are you applying AI into this specific context here? What good does it bring, for example? Obviously, if someone asks you that, then we'll be like, we'll be really mad about it. We'll be like, yeah, don't use them, But think about it as, this is how we create responsible innovation. This is how we create responsible usage of AI, by basically deliberately including people when it comes to the development of the technology, or designing the technology, or the implementing, or the deployment phase of that specific technology. So listen to different groups of people, engage, diverse stakeholders, trying to see, present to them what you have, and then after that, see what comments or what feedback you actually get from them, and basically just keep an open mind on, working together. Remember the responsible innovation definition. It's about working together. And obviously, the last one would be being responsive as well. No point reflecting, no point talking to people, no point sitting down thinking about what are different impacts if you don't actually do anything about it. So obviously, the last one would be, again, it's responding to all these things that you found out, the different impacts, how the different feedback, trying to implement it to basically create better technology or innovation at the end. There are different techniques or tools, they call it, related to the different dimensions that are presented, obviously. Obviously, over here, I'm not going to go through all of them, because if I go through all of them, you'll probably need like one semester for it. But yeah, I'm not going to go through all of them, but just some examples of, you can just have a quick read around, what are some of the examples of it. and what are some of the challenges you might face when it comes to implementing it. And I have the source down at the bottom as well. I am not sure if I believe the webinar is recorded, but I'm not sure whether the slides are shared. But either way, you could have the slides. You could have the source down there. I put it down there. So if you want to read that specific paper to have a better understanding of the different tools, you could definitely do that as well. But this is just to sort of prime you thinking that, yep, there are different tools within that 4 different dimensions that you could actually use that and apply that when it comes to responsible AI itself. And obviously some of the factors that might actually affect whether negatively or positively on the implementation of it. So I found 2 examples. Well, there are many, but I'll just talk about 2 of them where when I looked at what they did when it comes to responsible AI, I was thinking, oh, that actually, again, it fits back into what some of the techniques that responsible innovation, the lens of that perspective is actually proposing. So FICO is basically a credit scoring organization. So they basically created AI governance policies where they basically explain. They're basically being very transparent. They basically explain to the customers and the employees as well about the different machine learning models that they use, and then basically trying to explain to them how they use it, why they use it, some of the limitations of it. So that's one example of how basically you can apply. It's quite similar, apply those responsible innovation, different tools when it comes to developing responsible use of AI, for example. So IBM is another one. So IBM has an IBM AI ethics board, they call it. It's basically a central body within the company. It supports the different creation of ethical and responsible AI throughout IBM. So they have different guidelines, they have different policies, and they have different practices that they provide, such as talking about AI trust and transparency, for example. I'm talking about the ethics of AI. So providing that training and that governing body within IBM itself when it comes to trying to apply responsible AI. Of course, there are many as well, but I'll just go through those 2 examples. Okay. So obviously, hopefully I set up that argument, or I managed to convince you that yeah, responsible innovation, and it seems to be an interesting perspective that connects with responsible AI, and the tools there might be useful when it comes to your own work with developing responsible AI. So hopefully I managed to make that connection. But so next, what I want to talk about, this is also the third part of the webinar, and the last part, which is around, even though we know responsible innovation could be applied when it comes to developing, designing, implementing responsible AI, there are still challenges to actually developing responsible AI. So again, putting some stats out there. So according to Accenture, so only 35% of global consumers actually trust how AI is being implemented. And staggeringly, 77% think organizations must be held accountable. So obviously when you look at this, you'll be like, oh yeah, of course, organizations are the one implementing it. So obviously they need to be held accountable, right? If there are any misuse of AI. I'll show you something later that, to sort of get you thinking about, this is what we think, but that's not what the organizations are thinking. And obviously, with AI, there's a high chance of misinformation and stuff. So Forbes basically found 75% of consumers are actually concerned about it. Think about all the content created using AI to basically spread misinformation, for example. This is just a brief overview about what are some of the type of contents where consumers are actually concerned when it comes to artificial AI being used. It's not going to go through, but basically trying to set that scene that I think we all sort of agree that application of AI, whether it's generative AI or AI in organizations, different form of it, different versions of it, I think we are excited about it. So we are also interested in the different let's say efficiencies, or the different ideas, or the effectiveness of how AI could affect our work or affect our everyday life. But at the end of the day, there are still concerns around, all right, if everything works well, then yep, everybody's happy. But what if something's not um, going on according to plan? Then who should be responsible then at the end of the day? Customers, users, the producers, or government? In my class when I was posing that question to my students, I have students telling me the government should be the one thinking about that. And then I'm like, okay, good luck. But yeah. So my next question that I pose to everyone is around, so who has the responsibility when it comes to developing responsible AI? I wanted to actually play this video because I cut it. It's only around 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but I think I'll just skip over it. I'll just give you an explanation about what the video is about. It's basically a video from Wall Street Journal. Again, the source is there. You can have a look at the full video. So I used that in my class when I was teaching. So it's a Wall Street Journal video. The reporter over here, she went to a company called Synthesia to create an AI avatar of herself. She also then went to 11 Labs to basically create a sound profile of herself. And then what she was trying to do is basically try and see if an AI version of herself with her AI voice could actually go through different challenges. For example, calling the bank for verification purposes, making calls to her sister, for example. She has one example where she has her avatar attending a team meeting. So it's a quite an interesting video. But what I cut only the last part because the last part is where I think this question of who has responsibility comes into play. So in the oh, okay, I'll just skip that for now. So basically, at the end of the video that I initially wanted to show, Synthesia basically said that for customers, when they create their own AI avatar, they need to basically tick a box or sign saying that, oh, yep, I agree, that this is my AI avatar being used or blah, 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 my AI avatar being developed, etc., etc. So yeah, so you sign your life away basically. 11 Labs is the same. They basically, when you create your voice profile, because you need not actually be there, present, to actually record, you could send them a recording, for example, and they could run the synthesis for you. So for them, it's like, oh, yep, customers again need to tick a box to say that, yep, I am who I am, I'm creating this, etc., etc. So yeah, again, sign your life away, you know. So then my question would be, so if something bad happens, is that the Synthesia's responsibility or 11 Labs responsibility, or is it the user? Because from that specific case, it seems like they are saying that it's the user's problem, not me. The users sign here, tick here, sign here, whatever you want to call it, sign their life away saying that, yep, I take full responsibility if something happened to my avatar or something happened to my, voice synthesis, etc. So they're sort of trying to, not my problem. You tick yes, you click okay, you sign it off. So again, is that the right approach? That's why it seems like we think that organizations should be responsible, but a lot of all these organizations, they just make us read tons and of words, terms and conditions that we most of the time we don't read. Well, I personally don't read. I just scroll the way down and tick yes, and I sign my life away, not knowing what I signed up for. But you know, so should we actually, is it right for them to push that responsibility? Nope. It's the user's responsibility to read through nonsense and terms and conditions and not my problem. So I have a think around that. So that's one of the challenge as well. We have us telling companies that it's their responsibility, but companies a lot of them might actually think that, I told you upfront, but then, and you said okay, so not really my problem. Yeah, so just have a think about that. And obviously another example is how AI is being used in recruitment as well. So some of the algorithms that they use, obviously, you could obviously say that, are they discriminatory to a certain extent? Again, discriminatory, it's a big concept. It's a big that word is loaded, right? What is discriminatory to one person might not be discriminatory to another person. So, but again, think about how it's being applied in the recruitment context to screen out certain candidates. because that's how the algorithm is being set up. So at the end of the day, is that actually a responsible use of AI? Or is that actually considered responsible AI? Even though at the end of the day, it's just helping company, streamline their processes when it comes to doing recruitment, right? I was once in recruitment before I became an academic, like ages ago. But then, so, I understand that, oh, yeah, AI definitely allows better screening compared to the different platforms that we used like 20 years ago. But again, did we think around how it's being applied? Are we discriminating against certain groups of people based on certain criteria we put in an algorithm? Or, so it's just to get you think about, not expecting an answer, but just, to get you think around how, whose responsibility is it when it comes to developing responsible AI? Producer, or like what the organizations normally think is the user's problem, not my problem? So obviously reaching the end of the webinar, so some key takeaways. The responsible innovation perspective, or the lens that I present today, is based on the science, technology, and innovation studies perspective. So I know, what was it again? The scientific research policy side or group of people, they have a slightly different version of responsible innovation, also slightly different application of responsible innovation. Because I'm from the business school, for me, it's about how do companies apply or adopt responsible innovation practices. So that's why I come from the perspective of, yep, I'm concerned about what are some of the tools that companies could use to actually help them do that, rather than the more scientific policy or scientific funding policy perspective. And obviously, hopefully, I managed to sort of convince you that there are some similarities between responsible innovation and responsible AI. They actually share a lot of similarities. They all talk about being transparent, being developed, making sure that responsible AI has a benefit to society, making sure that we involve different stakeholders, for example, when it comes to designing, developing, and the implementation part of responsible AI. And obviously, there are techniques or tools or methods that are related to the 4 dimensions. So that's a table I presented that could be applied or can be applied when it comes to developing responsible AI. And the last part just now, which is around, so who has the ultimate responsibility when it comes to responsible AI? I'm pretty sure that we all would say that it's actually the producer. But then again, so a lot of the organizations are thinking that it's actually not their fault, or more like the mindset of, I inform you about it and you said okay. So are they still responsible? Just to leave you with that thought. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation for the webinar. Um, anyone with any questions to ask me? Sorry. Yep, go ahead, Mohammed.
Thank you, Doctor, for your great presentation. I'm from University Brunei. You have my voice? Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, actually, the challenge that I had in my research, because I'm working on AI tools in academic writing, like effective and ethical use of AI tools, but at the same time, responsible, we can say, yeah, responsible, ethical, effective use of AI tools, you know? And then I just one question that I have. I know that responsible AI by Microsoft or IBM, those like frameworks are most of the time used in like a field related to business, you know. But when it comes to applied linguistics or social science, do you have any idea about responsible AI framework, about responsible and ethical framework about applied linguistics? I mean, those frameworks can be applied in applied linguistics field as well, or no? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think so, because I don't come from the technical side, so I'm not sure if there are any other more frameworks that you can apply, especially to the linguistic side. So, but I think the IBM and the Microsoft ones, obviously they are a bit more, I would say they are a bit more like high level, like you say, maybe not only applied to a business side, but they're also quite high level. And you need to basically interpret yourself a lot of what they're at the moment. I think it's all self-related. I'm sort of self-regulated. So I'm also the editor-in-chief of Research Technology Management Journal. So because I took over in December, so I added a part around AI policy, about the journal's policy on AI use. So I would say at the moment, a lot of it is still self-regulated. I was also checking with Taylor and Francis, the publisher, whether they have tools that we could actually use to detect contributors or authors using AI but not acknowledging the fact that they use AI. So I would say it's an ongoing thing. I'm not sure if I answer your question, but yeah, it's sort of like a yeah.
Dr. Yan Ming, I don't take your time because others are waiting to ask you as well. But one question: do you have AI policies in education generally in New Zealand or specifically in Auckland? That's my question because that's something I'm working as well for my PhD
Yep.
research.
Yep. I would say from what I know is we don't have an official policy. For some reason, the university wants to keep it vague and open. Oh well, this is recorded, so I'm not supposed to say that. But yeah, so in general, to answer your question, no, we don't have an actual policy. It's more like business, faculty level, department level, and individual courses as course director, what we think is appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Something in the chat, isn't it? I have a question in the chat around what's the hardest part to control AI and how to solve it in all relevant parties. Soonest or just face by face? I'm assuming basically you're saying, yep, hardest part to control AI and then how to solve it by everyone kind of thing, by all relevant parties. And then you're asking whether should we do it quickly or should we do it face by face? So to answer I'll do a reverse, I'll answer the back part first. So it's basically, I would say is to do face by face because I would say AI technology itself is evolving every single day. There's like what we do today is just like when we look at blockchain and how governments were trying to regulate blockchain. It's the same idea because it's like the technology is evolving faster than what we can do to regulate it or what we can do to control it. So I think again, so to your question about what's the hardest part to control AI, I think it's actually how AI is evolving. At the moment, suddenly it's sort of exponentially the went up in terms of the development of it. Every single week, we're seeing new applications of it. Every single month or after a few months, we're seeing new versions of let's say we're talking about generative. I'm talking about generative AI here. So I would say because the technology is evolving very quickly, so face by face would probably sounds like a better option, I think, rather than soonest. Because once you solve this specific one, a few months later, something new will come out that this specific, let's say you have a regulation on it, or let's say you have a policy on it, it doesn't apply to the new one because you look at it, oh, new one looks a bit different. Then it becomes like, okay, then you need to basically trying to play catch up, which I don't think that's a good idea when it comes to trying to control AI. And I actually think you can't really control AI as well. You can sort of regulate or control the use of AI, but yeah, not really control AI per se. I don't think you control its development because if it's proprietary, then yeah, you can't regulate that within the companies, or at least yeah. I mean, in most economies you can't. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah. Yeah, if there's no more question, then well, I guess I would say thank you for attending today's webinar. Hopefully I sort of stimulate your thinking a bit around responsible AI and responsible innovation. If you're interested to talk more about it or you have any other questions after this to ask me, then yeah, just send me an email. Thank you.